In her relatively short time in office, Senator Kamala Harris has fought to raise wages, reform our broken criminal justice system, make healthcare a right for all Americans, and expand access to childcare for working parents. Please, we the people, it's the end of our speakers today. Let's give a rousing welcome for Senator Kamala Harris.
I certainly think of this as an inflection moment. I think of this as being similar to a moment in time when my parents met, when they were graduate students at the University of California, Berkeley, and active in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. You know, this is an inflection moment. This is a moment in time where collectively as a country, we are being required to look in a mirror and ask a question. Who are we? And friends, I believe the answer is a good one. Flawed though we may be, imperfect though we may be, I believe we are a great country. I believe we are a great country. And this is a moment in time that is requiring us to fight for who we are. Let's think about it. We are a great country. We are a country that was founded on certain ideals. The ideals that were present when we wrote the Constitution of the United States and all of its amendments. The ideals that were at play when we issued the Declaration of Independence and wrote the Bill of Rights. Those ideals that informed those words in 1776 that we are all and should be treated as equals. This is a moment in time that is requiring us to fight for those ideals, and fight we will. And fight we will. But we also know this is a moment in time where there are very powerful forces attempting to sow hate and division among us. And we cannot allow that to happen. You know, I went to, my daughter, she graduated high school last year, but when I first came to DC to the Senate, she was a senior, she asked me to come speak to her class. So I went and I spoke to this room full of American teenagers in the school library. And I got there, and one of the first questions, a student raised her hand and asked me, what are we going to do about a divided America? And that broke my heart, right? Here it is, our kids should be going into the world believing that they can be all that they can be, believing that they can create the things that have never been created, that they can do the things that have never been imagined. But the question was, what are we going to do about a divided America? So I told her what I really believe. I said, you know what? I reject the premise. I don't believe we are divided. I believe we have much more in common than what separates us. And I know it to be true. I know it to be true based on my personal, my professional experiences. I know it to be true based on that thought that wakes most of us up in the middle of the night. You know, for a lot of us, it's about 3 in the morning. Sometimes we wake up with a cold sweat. Well, for the vast majority of us, when we wake up in the middle, you know, they call it the bewitching hour or the witching hour. When we wake up with that thought in the middle of the night, for the vast majority of us, that thought is never through the lens of the party with which we're registered to vote. That thought is never through the lens of some demographic a pollster put us in. And for the vast majority of us, it has to do with one of just a very few things. Our personal health, the health of our children or our parents. For many Americans, can I get a job? Can I keep a job? Can I pay the bills by the end of the month? Can I retire with dignity? For so many of our students, can I pay off those student loans? The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And as we deal with these forces that are sowing hate and division, I believe it is imperative that we hold on to that knowledge. And be realistic about where we are. We are also at a moment in time where there are a lot of folks who are extremely distrustful of their government, its leaders, and institutions. And we've got to deal with that. And so distrustful. Well, let's talk about trust and the nature of a relationship of trust. The nature of a relationship of trust is that it is a reciprocal relationship. You give and you receive. And one of the most important ingredients in a relationship of trust is truth. But there's a funny thing about truth. Speaking truth can often make folks quite uncomfortable. And for people like me, who run for office and supposed leaders, there is an incentive, a desire, that we will leave the room feeling lovely about themselves, and we will sprinkle good-feeling dust all over the place, and everyone will applaud as we leave, and we'll feel wonderful.
Right.
Well, speaking truth doesn't always accomplish that goal. But what we all know is it is also a fact that yes, people may walk away from that conversation saying, you know, I didn't particularly like what I had to hear, but they will also walk away from that conversation respecting that it was an honest conversation.
Yeah.
So, y'all are looking at me, some folks are looking at me like, okay, Kamala, what truths are you thinking about? Okay, let's speak truth. After Charlottesville, if it weren't clear before then, racism, sexism, homophobia, anti-Semitism are real in this country. Let's speak that truth so we can deal with it. Let's speak the truth in our country that although people want to tout the job numbers, the fact is that wages are stagnant while the cost of living is going up, be it gas, housing, or tuition. Let's speak that truth. Let's speak the truth that the United States has a problem with mass incarceration, where we incarcerate more people per capita than any other country on the globe, and we've got an attorney general that's trying to resuscitate the war on drugs, not get rid of mandatory minimums, and then do away with consent decrees and shut down pattern and practice investigations. Let's speak truth. Let's speak truth. We are a country of immigrants. Yes. Unless you are Native American or your ancestors were kidnapped and brought over on a slave ship, your people are immigrants. Let's speak that truth. Let's speak the truth. And let's speak the truth. We all have so much more in common than what separates us. Let's speak that truth. So, based on all of the realities of where we are, here's how I feel about it. We've got to deal with the fact that we've got a fight in front of us. And as we all know, and this is a room full of people that are used to marching and shouting and doing whatever we have to do in the name of justice.
Yep.
And let's be clear about something.
Yep.
Don't let anybody take our flag.
That's right.
When we march and we shout and we fight, this is a fight that is born out of love of country. Don't let anyone take that away from us. In fact, I would say there are two definitions of what it means to be a patriot. One that suggests to be a patriot, you condone the conduct of your country, whatever it does. And then there is the kind of patriot I believe all of us to be. The kind that will fight each and every day for the ideals of our country. And that's what is at play right now. And so my final point is this. My final point is this. Years from now, our children, our grandchildren, other folks are going to look at us, they're going to look up at us, and they're going to say, so where were you at that inflection point,
Right.
at that moment?
Right.
And what I know this room knows is we don't want our answer to simply be how we felt. Our answer is going to be what we did. What we did. The fights we waged. The action we took. Rhetoric people to vote, making sure they know their voice, making sure they know they are not alone, giving them the support and the dignity they deserve, getting people out to understand 2018, there's so much at stake, and we are not going to regret these days. We will fight for our country. We will show people what it means to love your country. We will take action. My time is up.
Senator Kamala Harris, everyone.
I will introduce the speakers, and I will tap you lightly when you have 30 seconds to finish so that we can get to all the questions. So the first question call for Senator Harris is from Becca Wilden, a member of the Sierra Club. Thank you, Becca, for being here.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Wilden. I'm a Sierra Club member, as mentioned, and I'm also from North Carolina. Go Tar Heels! Okay, there we go. Okay. I've been fortunate enough to have been born into a family where activism wasn't merely encouraged, it was expected. It's part of the reason why I was named for my grandmother, who fought to better her community for the 94 years that she was alive. After college, I returned home to Asheville and began volunteering to protect our clean air and water. In 2014, 50,000 tons of coal ash sludge spilled into the Dan River, devastating a lot of my state. This spill was yet another reason why I was working to shut down the coal plant in Asheville. In 2015, it was announced that the coal plant would be retired, but this wasn't the final step, merely one in a very long journey to protect our community from the fossil fuel industry. My grandmother started taking those steps a long time ago, and I intend to keep pushing until every community's air and water are protected. Just this past year, the world watched as Houston residents, already forced to live next to refineries and chemical facilities, were flooded by Hurricane Harvey, a storm supercharged by climate pollution. And that is exactly what environmental racism looks like. It's clear that we must transition to a 100% renewable energy economy, which offers the opportunity to create jobs in disadvantaged communities, strengthen the power of labor unions, and begin to close the racial wealth gap. An immediate step that can be taken to expedite the transition is by ending the rubber stamping of fossil fuel infrastructure on public lands. If, hopefully when, Democrats control the Senate in 2019, what is your plan to transition to a clean energy economy while ensuring low-income communities and communities of color play a central role? And how does ending the exploitation of tribal and public lands for fossil fuel operation fit into that?
First of all, your grandmother's genes are strong. So thank you. Well, let me just put this in context in terms of the work I've done for years and the work I intend to keep doing. As you probably know, I was Attorney General of California, and I'm proud that California, thank you, and I'm proud that California has been a leader on many of these issues. And as you may also know, for the first at least year that I've been in the United States Senate, was on the Environment and Public Works Committee of the United States Senate when we had the unfortunate occasion to have to review and the nomination of Scott Pruitt to be the head of the EPA. I voted against him. But what is clear to me is that, to your point, this administration and many powerful forces are trying to undo the smart work that has happened to appreciate the fact that all human beings need to drink clean water and breathe clean air. And to the point of your question, that should not be a function of one zip code, right? And so it has been about fighting against this administration when they are trying, for example, to get rid of the waivers for various states like California, where we have higher standards than the EPA. It is about also using the power of the bully pulpit, which you obviously are a leader on also, to say, look, we've got to understand that on the issue of the environment and climate change, I care about this issue not because I have any particular desire to hug a tree, but I have a strong desire to hug a healthy baby. And that's what this is about. I was in Michigan and meeting with the young leaders around Flint. And it's the same point, but also more specifically to answer your question on renewable energy, we've got to understand that this is also, the whole presentation that these people have tried to make is a false choice. They say you're either in favor of the economy or you're in favor of the climate, right? And it's a false choice, because on the issue of renewable energy, I urge everyone to pick up the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They just published a report a couple months ago, and it was the top 20 jobs for which we don't have the skilled labor, and there's going to be incredible growth. Guess what number 1 and number 2 on the list are? I'm not going to take up my time requiring. I'll just tell you. Installation and maintenance of solar panels, installation and maintenance of wind turbines, right? But here's an important point. So there is incredible job growth. We need those jobs to be filled. That's about the economy. But the other piece that also has been pointed out to me by our brothers and sisters in labor is when we talk about who needs to fill those jobs, it's carpenters, it's electricians, it's pipe fitters, it's all the guys in the building trades who have learned those skills. Those are the skills that are required. So when we talk about this in terms of the job potential, let's also not be distracted to believe these are new jobs. Hire building trades. Hire from good union, trained, apprentice. Go fill those jobs.
Thank you. So our next question is from Bianca Cunningham, a member of CWA.
My name is Bianca Cunningham, and I worked for Verizon Wireless retail store in Brooklyn, New York for 6 years until I was fired for organizing and becoming a leader in the Communication Workers of America, Local 1109. My union took my case to the National Labor Relations Board 3 years ago, and we won. But surprise, surprise, Verizon was able to appeal, and they've continued to appeal for the last 2 years. And of course now we're at the mercy of the labor board that has been appointed by Donald Trump. Sadly, my situation is hardly unusual. Thousands of workers are fired every year simply for trying to organize. One academic report showed that the workers fired for union activity in 1/3 of all organizing campaigns, and 57% of campaigns employers threatened to shut down or move the workplace. It's no accident that private sector unionization has fallen to under 7% of workforce in this country, which is the lowest level since 1915. Senator, the sad truth is that the Republican Party has been focused like a laser to destroy the labor movement for the last few decades. We saw it in Wisconsin and in Indiana and in Michigan, when Republican governors took over and eliminated public sector collective bargaining and passed right to work for less legislation. We saw it when Donald Trump nominated Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court to ensure a 5-4 majority against public sector unions. But over the last 40 years, when Democrats have had the opportunity to strengthen the law to make it easier for workers like myself to organize, they've blown it, to be quite frank. They were afraid to alienate their corporate donors, and their majority included senators from right-to-work states who weren't committed to rebuilding the labor movement. Now the political consequences of that ambivalence are very clear. Senator, are you 100% committed to passing legislation that will restore workers' rights to organize in this country by increasing penalties on employers who violate the law, allowing for card check recognition of union majorities, and requiring binding arbitration of first contracts? And what are you doing as a U.S. Senator right now to work with the labor movement to expand the scope and ambition of labor law in this country, to make it easier for workers to raise wages through facilitating sectoral or industry-wide bargaining and the creation of state and local level wage boards that can raise wages in particular industries?
So again, I'll point to my track record to tell you where I'm headed. Again, I fought as Attorney General against Friedrichs, which, as we know, was the precursor to what they're trying to do now. And this has always been a fight that we have to defend, which is against the rights of working people to have wages and benefits commensurate with the value of their work and their value as human beings who deserve to have dignity. And so there are a number of things. That is about legislation. I'm on a number of bills. There's about what we need to do. Even just yesterday, I endorsed for CWA in terms of the call centers and all that we need to do. Yeah. So I will not only support, but will help lead as I've always done. And let's be clear. And I want to get back to an earlier point I made. It's interesting because the press will talk about, things are good for working people. Look at the jobs numbers. And what's lost, I think, in that conversation is if you want to talk about the economic health of people, you need to look at wages and benefits. And the only place that there is going to be a fight to defend living wage, decent benefits is organized labor. That is, everyone, whether they are a member of a union or not, have benefited from the fight organized labor has waged over the years to get us the weekend and the 8-hour workday and sick leave and any kind of benefits. And so, but we are under attack. There is no question we're under attack, and we're just going to have to keep making it clear that it is labor who represents the true voice of working Americans. And we will not be defeated, but we're going to have a fight in front of us. And again, to your point, 2018 couldn't be more important because remember, the United States Senate is where those judges get confirmed or not. I'm on Senate Judiciary, and I'm going to tell y'all, if you haven't been watching, those folks that they're bringing in, you talk about North Carolina, Jesse Helms' henchman has been voted into our committee, right? North Carolina, where the federal court found on voting rights surgical precision in terms of what they were doing to prevent African Americans from voting. But the court is going to be where a lot of the decisions get made about what is constitutional and what is not in terms of organized labor, and we're going to have to fight on that end too around elections.
Thank you. So you're doing so well, we may get to ask you a fourth question, which is great. Our next question comes from Peshka Calloway from Planned Parenthood Action Fund.
Hi, my name is Peshka Calloway. I'm from Parkersburg, West Virginia. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, a single mother, and a Planned Parenthood patient. Where I go to get reproductive health care is an extremely personal decision for me, and I demand expert care. So like many female and male veterans, I chose Planned Parenthood. I chose Planned Parenthood in 2011 when I needed access to abortion, for an abortion. I needed to know where to go, and when I needed the follow-up care after my abortion, I went to Planned Parenthood. And I chose Planned Parenthood in 2015 when I needed birth control, and they covered the cost of my exam and my Nexplanon implant. I still have it today. Planned Parenthood taught me to be an advocate for my own health. They got me genetic testing on a lump in my left breast that had been brushed off by military doctors and by some private care doctors, despite me having a family history of breast cancer. Planned Parenthood helped me to take the first steps that led to the discovery just last year that I had precancerous cells in my right breast and allowed me to have the surgery to remove them. Planned Parenthood understands that I'm a veteran struggling with PTSD, anxiety, and major depressive disorder, and they're there for me. I'm also a survivor of sexual assault and domestic violence, so Planned Parenthood is the only place that I feel safe. Yet the Trump-Pence administration and politicians in Congress have been trying to prevent patients like me from accessing care from experts like Planned Parenthood, often leaving patients with nowhere to turn for specialized expert care. And in West Virginia, this year we're facing an amendment that would take away the guarantee of the right to safe and legal abortion. And that is what I fear the most. I fear for my community. Senator, what are you doing to turn the tide and help increase access to reproductive health care across the country, including access to safe and legal abortion, birth control, and life-saving cancer screenings?
Well, let me just first thank you for your courage. You've had the courage to serve our country and the courage to stand and tell your story as a voice for those who may not be able to do it. And it is so important. Your leadership is so important. And there are people who will never know your name and people you will never meet who are going to benefit from your leadership. So thank you for that. This is a full-on assault on women's reproductive health care. There is no question. And even just recently, what we're hearing is they're going to try and get rid of pre-existing condition. The elimination of pre-existing condition is eliminating someone from getting health coverage. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. Not to mention what they're doing, because you should really just kind of see the constellation. And they're separating children from their mothers at the border. And they're doing all of this thing that, in terms of pay equity issues, there's a full-on assault. And we have to fight against it. And one of the points that you're raising is because we understand also healthcare should not be a privilege. It's a right. And let's be also clear about this. Government has just 3 essential functions: public education, public safety, and public health. And government should not be in the business of getting in the way of anyone's access to free and affordable health care. And that's part of what's going on. So the fight is about everything that we need to do, from in committees dealing with these folks that are being brought to us, like in judiciary. There was Vitter, this woman was being appointed to be a judge, who basically said that abortions lead to promiscuous behaviors by women. Can you believe that? Right? I mean, she's out of another, I don't want to say moment in time because it was never right. I'd say planet. But this is what they're doing. And so it's about us fighting and using our voices to talk about, one, the fact that the vast majority of women who receive, and men, who receive health care and services from Planned Parenthood are receiving it for, just as you described, breast cancer screenings, ovarian cancer screenings, things of that nature. It is saving people's lives. And it is a trusted source of health care, because so much of what we need, in particular as women in terms of reproductive health care, is we want to be in an environment that is not judging us. Because if we're going to receive meaningful care, we have to know we are welcome when we walk through the door. And we know when we are welcome and we know when we are not. We know when we are being judged and we know when we are not. And on the issue of Planned Parenthood, it has a long-standing history of letting folks know they are safe to go in there and receive the kind of care they need. So we've got to keep fighting for this. I saw the sign after wrap up, but here's what I'll say. I'll paraphrase a saying from Coretta Scott King years ago. And she basically said, the fight for civil rights, and you can put in there the fight for justice, the fight for equality, the fight for civil rights must be fought and won with each generation. And when she said that, I think she had 2 points. One is that it's just the very nature of this fight, and that's the fight for choice, the fight for so much of what we're fighting for. It's the very nature of these fights, guys, that whatever gains we make, they will not be permanent. It's the nature of it. So the second point of the admonition is then understanding it's the nature of it, that the gains won't be permanent. Let us not despair. Let us not be overwhelmed. Let us not throw up our hands when it is time to roll up our sleeves. So we will not tire, is my point. We will not tire. I got so sick of 2017. At the end of 2017, I was like, I'm so mad. I'm so tired of being mad and upset and full of anxiety. And I said, this is just not sustainable. And so my New Year's resolution is 2018. I decided I am going to be, and I gave myself a name, I am going to be a joyful warrior.
Yeah.
Right? So we will be joyful in our fight.
We will be joyful in our fight. The last question is a question about race in America, and it comes from Crisali de los Santos from Casa. And where are all the people from Casa? Let me see you. That's right. And CPD Action. Crisali, muchas gracias.
Hi, my name is Crisalis de los Santos, and I was born in Dominican Republic. In 2011, I came to the United States to reunite with my father and younger siblings in Baltimore. I am a proud member of CASA in Baltimore and a board member of CASA in Action, and also part of the CPD Action Network. In 2015, after Freddie Gray was killed by the police in Baltimore, I was part of CASA youth leadership team and fought for justice and a police reform. Last year, I was able to swear in as a U.S. citizen and register to vote. Days before graduating third from my high school class. I am currently attending Baltimore City Community College, and I plan to continue to be a strong advocate for the immigrant community and the police reform. It's clear that we have not, as a country, addressed the legacy of slavery, colonialism, Jim Crow, and white supremacy. Take a look at how the police and criminal justice system has failed community members like Freddie Gray, who was killed in Baltimore by the police. Or how ICE is terrorizing and even killing members of our immigrant community, like Claudia Gonzalez and Rosana Hernandez. The criminal neglect of the people from Puerto Rico, and the election of Donald Trump. My question, and the question that my community has for you is, what will you do as a U.S. Senator and a national leader to acknowledge the issues and the issues of race and heal the deep racial trauma? What specific policies or programs are needed to repair the harm that has been done to our communities of color?
Thank you for your leadership and congratulations on all of that. Our future is bright when I look at you. I know our future is bright. So first we gotta speak truth, right? So let's start with that. We have to speak truth. Racism is real in this country and is evident in so many areas. It is evident in who is incarcerated. It is evident in who is arrested, who is profiled. It is evident when we look at jobs numbers, when we look at what is going on in terms of pay equity issues. You look at the disparities even among women, white women versus black women and Latina women, and there's a sliding scale. Racism is real, and we've got to deal with it in a number of ways as it relates to law enforcement. Part of what needs to happen, and I actually created the first in the nation training for police officers on implicit bias and procedural justice, because of the kinds of cases that you have described, where it has been bias about profiling and not knowing communities that has led to disproportionate numbers in terms of who is arrested, who is prosecuted, and who is incarcerated. So there is that. We need to have, and let's look again at what's going on with this Attorney General, we need to have robust pattern and practice investigations and a Department of Justice that understands that the only way that justice for all of us will occur is when there is justice for all of us, and that means understanding and agreeing that there are departments that have a pattern and practice of racial discrimination and profiling, and where that occurs, there needs to be consequence and accountability, including litigation and convictions. Let's look at the fact that this Department of Justice has not only shut down those pattern and practice investigations, but where under the previous administration there has been a finding of discrimination and the need for a consent decree by a court so that the court can supervise what should be the repair to those systems, that they're also diminishing those cases. This is going to be a real problem for us, and so we have to fight, and we have to fight on that. We have to fight also to require accountability for prosecutors and police departments to their communities and to the courts. And where these cases occur, we need to take them to court, and there has to be legislation. I brought a pattern and practice investigation when I was Attorney General of California, because these are the kinds of things that we have to do. But it is also about training, and it is also about paying attention to the fact that in our criminal justice system, we have focused on incarceration instead of prevention. We have focused on what I call a false choice, which suggests on criminal justice policy, suggesting you're either tough on crime or you're soft on crime, instead of asking are we smart on crime? And are we focusing on prevention as one of the smartest and most effective ways to create public safety instead of prosecution and arrest after a crime has occurred? So there's a lot of work that needs to happen across the board, but there has to be accountability and consequence.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator Harris.